We can begin.
Definitely, sir. I think we can start with our session.
Good evening, everyone. We at GCSMAI, Golf Course Superintendents and Managers Association of India, are pleased to host this webinar meant for dissemination of new information, new technologies, and more education for everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Thomas Peter, sales representative of VGR equipment in England, UK, and Ireland, and any other territory in Europe which doesn't have a representative. Is that right, Peter? So
that's correct. Yeah, all over.
The VGR equipment deals in sustainable development of golf courses. It deals with enhanced sustainability, and enhanced sustainability primarily is all about not having to do too much of renovation of golf courses and keep the longevity of the golf course very high. They do have machinery which is less disruptive, easier to operate, and does take care of the turf much, much better than what conventional technologies did. So I think without wasting much time, I will hand over to Thomas Peter, who will give us a presentation of this new technology and new machinery which VGR of Netherlands deals with.
Thank you very much. We've got a short presentation just to show everyone. It's got a couple of videos in there of how the machine works, and I'll just talk through each slide, and then we'll cover questions at the end. So I'll just share my screen off that. There we go. So my name's Tom. I work for VGR. It's a Dutch company. We basically want to be known as innovative leaders in the turf machinery world, and encouraging good soil health without the use of chemicals, man-made fertilizers, and things like that. Our machines are aiming to give control back to the greenkeeper. And everything we do, we have a say inside our company: healthy soil for better turf. Everything we do comes back into that category. This is a bit of an overview. Unfortunately, some of the headings are in Dutch. As you can see at the top, we've got a contract inside. Our machinery is developed inside of that. It's put through its paces, so we'll carry out in Holland, do a little bit of work in Belgium and Germany as well. We'll actually do work on golf courses, all kinds of sports fields, rebuilding football pitches, and we'll do top changer work at all of those sites as well. All of that generates some green waste that comes into one of our 2 composting plants that we've got in Holland, and there we'll draw in about 80,000 tonnes of green waste every year, which we'll then make products out of. So those products are going predominantly into agriculture, but then we've been developing a certain line of products that we're putting into sports turf applications. So we're working with a couple of greenkeepers in Holland to actually develop those products. So we'll grind the compost down to a very fine powder, which we can actually then add into sand and put through the top changer. And it does create this sort of circular economy, which is kind of how our company runs inside of Holland. And right at the bottom there, we've got equipment that we're developing. So at the moment, we've got 3 products, and that all revolves around the top changer. That's the key one. I was going to show you a video next to the machine working, just so you've got a bit of context of what it looks like, what it sounds like, and moving across. It's all on golf courses located all around the world. So it's just a couple minutes long. go. So the last machine on that video is actually the latest version of the top changer as well, which I'll go into more detail with shortly. So what does the top changer actually do? So top changer uses water power to aerate the soil. When the water is injected into the ground, it creates pathways, and you're going to be able to get oxygen that is going to be able to get down, and then gases coming back up, preventing anaerobic conditions and therefore encouraging good soil health. The soil is then able to absorb water further down into the profile. And this is all done without leaving any residue on the sports field. So you can use this as a water-only aerator, first of all. When you engage the hydraulics of the tractor, you can then add sand simultaneously in this operation. So this sand is wet sand. It will take dry sand as well. We've actually found wet sand works better. The top changer then injects the sand deep into the profile, so you're going to increase water infiltration and dilute the organic matter throughout the profile. After you've been across the process, any residue left on the surface is kept to a minimum. Once brushed and rolled, you can return to play. We're actually, most of the time we're doing this work during play, so we'll put greens onto winter greens at the front. Once they've been brushed and rolled, we can actually put the pin back in the position and carry on play as normal. As the machine works, so water supplied from your irrigation system via a hose. It can connect into either side of the machine. It will then pass through a filtration system. Once it's gone through there, the pump, which runs off the PTO shaft of the tractor, will actually pump the water up to 200 bar to a maximum of 290 bar pressure. The water is then pumped into this blue accumulator bottle here, and the accumulator bottle is there to act as a reservoir and actually stabilize the water pressure system. So it acting like a buffer, really. That high pressure water is then directed into the two manifold blocks at the back of the machine. In the center of the manifold block is a cartridge valve, which actually controls the injection. So diagram of the injection block on the right hand side. Cartridge valve will be coming into the right hand side of this block here. You've got sand is coming in through the brass fitting here. When the injection cartridge valve opens, the high pressure water is stored in the gallery. Once it opens, it will put it into the main gallery, where it will be fired through a jet, which is in the center of this block here. I hope everyone can see my cursor. Once it's fired through the jet, it will travel down the red line. Once it passes through the center of the block, it actually creates a vacuum, and that's called the Venturi effect. The more pressure that you put through the injection nozzle, the more vacuum you actually get in the manifold. So the water's going ahead, it's creating the opening in the ground, and then the vacuum is actually drawing the sand in behind it. So you've got no moving parts inside of this manifold other than the cartridge valve, and there's nothing touching the ground other than high pressure water. So this means you can drive over furniture which is in the green. If there's irrigation pipes which are high lying, you can drive straight over them and you're not going to damage anything. Sprinkler heads as well. And yet to damage a sprinkler head in doing this process. As I said before, you can use the top changer as a water-only aeration method. Very effective if you've got quite hard ground, if you've got layers which are capped off underneath the surface. You can blast through them, start getting gas exchange happening. I've seen this go down to about 400 millimeter hole in the ground. And you can see on the right hand side, we've got a couple of irrigation marker flags just highlighting the depth of the hole. And this hole can actually be changed to a 6 millimeter hole as well, so you can get a cleaner finish on the surface. It's got a short video here of just a protonometer going into the ground between the aeration holes. Before we'd been over, it was actually quite difficult to get the protonometer into this green, so the level of decompaction was quite high. So on the machine, it uses a hydraulic circuit to actually power the sand side of the system. So this is done via two lines coming out of your tractor. First of all, it will drive a sand agitation rotor inside the hopper. And then the flow of oil is then directed to a shaker table at the back, and this will vibrate the sand down the sand tubes. This function, both functions on this are adjustable depending on how wet the sand is. And some sands, if it's dune sand, for example, requires just a bit more agitation to get it down into the tubes. It's a short video of this working. Let's play that again so you can see the sand is being moved inside the hopper and fed down into the shaker table at the back. It's quite important that the sand is kept as clean as possible, just to help it get through these tubes. Things like leaves and that will slow you down, but it's really stones. If there's small stones, they'll actually get caught in the manifold, which it's not a huge problem, but it will slow the operation down. So it's important to make sure that the sand is clean as possible. So the machine is actually controlled via an LED touchscreen display in the cab. Now this controls the whole operation of the machine. So any adjustments are made on this. You don't have to touch the screen to do any of those. So you've got a few inputs on the left-hand side, things like speed and spacing is quite important. And on the right-hand side, you've got pulse length. Now this is the length of time that the injection lasts for. So it can be anywhere from 0.4 of a second up to 1 second. So that's generally dictating the amount of sand volume that's in the ground. Pressure will be dictating the depth. So a combination of the two gets you to the results that you want to get to in the ground. Average forward speed is around 0.5 kph. If you're not requiring much pressure, sometimes you can go faster than that. And it's going to take you around about an hour to do a 500 square metre green. So the machine's 1.6 metres wide. The weight without sand is 700 kilos. So with a full container of sand, you're going to be just over a tonne. It's going to require good lift capacity from a tractor. Pressure is adjustable from 200 to 290 bar, 2 injection blocks, 10 injectors each, and the whole space in between those is 8 centimetres. And working speed 0.3 to 0.8 kph. So some of the challenges you might encounter as a greenkeeper, so you've potentially got high levels of organic matter, poor drainage, compaction, thatch build-up, soft greens that need firming, speeding up, disease, pest pressures, budget pressures, limited time for maintenance, labour shortage, cost of downtime of maintenance and limited weather windows to carry out maintenance. Now, these are all things that the top changer can help with. Weather windows as well, it works quite well. Sometimes if you've got a set date for maintenance and you can't move that date, and then you get a period of wet weather, it often means that you can't do exactly what you wanted on the course or facility where you're working. The top changer will work in wet conditions, so it's ideal for that. So what the top changer is doing, so diluting, controlling organic matter. They're aerating and amending, can decompact with this process, diluting thatch and creating that gas exchange to aid thatch breakdown. We're adding sand throughout the profile, increasing firmness, and you can do this in the top layer of the turf as well. It works really effectively. We're encouraging good root depth, and then plant health and resilience, and hopefully we're leading to a healthier profile and leading to less inputs into the ground. Increased infiltration and low disruption and fast return to play. The infiltration, we've actually had a study done. It was a 6-month trial, and the infiltration rate doubled from using a top changer for 2 applications. That's quite interesting. Top changer is labour efficient, only requires two operators, one guy operating the tractor and the other managing the hoses and the sand supply. You can have less downtime and reduction in green fees during maintenance recovery period. Although you wouldn't hold a tournament on it, you can play directly after, and a lot of people won't know you've actually been there and done maintenance. Aeration, top dress, and amend in one pass. So with this, we're removing at least 3 processes in one pass. So conventional method of coring, removing the cores, top dressing with sand, brushing, then probably a reapplication of sand and brushing again. Where with that, we're doing less brushing than the other methods, so we're leading to less damage to the actual plant itself, no less stress. You can add other products to the mix. Generally, if you keep it at around 20% in sand, then it flows nicely through the machine. So you can add things like profile amendment. In Holland, we're trialing adding small amounts of our fine compost through the machine just to add a little bit of food for the plant. If you can mix it to a ratio, then it will go through the machine. As I said before, it works in all weathers. So if it is raining, you can carry on and you can get your aeration done. Using wet sand saves a lot of money. Here in the UK, dry sands around about 4 times more expensive per tonne than wet sand. And then you've got the problems of storing it and transporting it around the course. You can use it on all types of sports turf and surfaces. There's machines used all around the world in all types of grass species, so warm season, cool season. It works fine with all of them. You're extending the life expectancy of the playing surface as well. So a lot of the greens we're working on in the UK are well over 100 years old, and we're hopefully there's no time that I have to dig them up and relay them anytime soon with this process. And it really is it's an alternative method to traditional turf maintenance. These are just some of the areas that you can use the machine. It does work quite well as well on high traffic areas and areas where you do have high line pipes. Normally you wouldn't want to take a tined aerator across these. but with the top change, you're not going to do any damage to those pipes, so you can aerate them. You can actually, if there's dips or like a collar dam on a green, you can actually build those areas up a little bit by pumping sand into them. So just going to talk a little bit about the results above and below ground. Obviously, this is the most important bit. So we've just got a couple of slides of profiles that have been taken from previous work. Now they'll depend on, there'll be different profile structures. So some are sand-based, some are more soily, and there's one that's particularly heavy clay. So on the left-hand side is, this is in Germany. It's a really reasonably old course, and the greenkeeper wanted to get through the top layer, increase drainage down into the area where he had lots of clean sand from original construction. Middle profile was a new course, hadn't been built that long, and they were just trying to firm up and actually add a different type of sand to the mix. Bottom right is Trump Turnberry in Scotland, and we're basically trying to achieve to firm up the surface in this one as well. So that's only 50 millimeters in the top surface. And then with that, they were going quite a tight spacing, so getting down to about 5 or 6 centimeters between their injections. So quite a high volume of sand, but concentrated in the top layer. Left-hand side, again, slightly longer shot, increasing drainage down further through the profile. This is slightly more soil-based, green. In the middle profile here was this is actually in Finland. There was a reconstruction done, and they'd used a very, very coarse sand, but it had fine particles in it as well, which locked off the top profile. And they were just trying to amend that top layer. They were considering digging up this whole green because of the problems it's caused, but now they've got a solution to amend that area, so they don't have to have an expensive overhaul. Top right is about 50 or 60 millimeters of root zone or topsoil on this is a Golf T built on pure English clay. So the top changer actually managed to inject into that a fair way as well, increasing drainage further down into the profile. And bottom right was green that was experiencing quite bad flooding in a certain area. So this is using most of the machine's power and actually injecting somewhere around 20 centimeters down into the profile, increasing the drainage further down. This particular one was very anaerobic. And then once the machine went over, you could actually smell that gas exchange already happening. So just a little bit on operating depths. So this is going to depend on a couple of things: the compaction of the green and moisture content. So ideal operation is 25 to 35% moisture content in the profile. This really is making sure that the sand will be taken into the ground, and it will give you a clean finish on top and actually help to get to where you want to get to. On sandy profiles, you can expect to see a depth of 150 to 250 millimeters maximum. This will depend on compaction levels and may need a couple of operations to actually get down to this level. And more soil and clay-based profiles, you're going to get slightly less depth at around 100 to 150. You can get further down, but it's going to take more applications than if you're on a sandy profile. On very hard surfaces, you can use the water only method first. So do the entire green with water only, fracture the ground up, and then drive over again with the sand on. That's quite helpful to get further down if you do have quite bad compaction issues. And I've seen this go down to 400 millimeters, so a fair depth. That would be quite a large, deep tine aerator that you'd have to use to get down to that sort of depth. On all profiles, depth is controlled with the injection pressure, which you're going to adjust on your control panel in the tractor. So finish above the ground. Picture here is of the new machine. It doesn't have a brush fitted on this at the minute, on this particular machine, which helps to dry the sand out quicker. But still a really tidy finish. There's a couple more here. So this again is Trump Turnberry in Scotland. This was actually done after there was a frost, and we just waited for it to thaw, and it was still a little bit frozen in the ground, but it still went in 100 millimeters into the ground. Top right is a particularly clean result that hadn't had any brushing or anything done to it. And again, on the bottom right there was that's Royal Troon in Scotland. That particular green, we didn't brush the after at all. It was perfect, really. I think one guy went over with a dew whip just to knock any small pieces of sand about. So yeah, pretty clean finish. Just got a little video of one green being brushed here. Generally, one pass with the brush is enough to clean up after the operation. So conditions for a successful operation. So suitable tractor, got a slide on that next, sufficient water, clean sand, and that should get you great results. So you're going to need somewhere around 40 to 50 horsepower. Lift capacity of around 1,200 kilos. PTO speed is 540. If you've got 540E, then that just saves on fuel. Preferably cruise control. Now the whole spacing is limited by the forward speed of the tractor, much like a conventional aerator. So if you want to bring the whole spacing in, you'll need to go slower. If you want to extend the whole spacing in, go faster. Creeps, if you've got a manual gearbox, it would need creep speed. A pair of hydraulic outlets at the back, and we generally run it on John Deere 4000 series, work really well. We used it on a couple of times. A Kubota L2 522 works really nicely on that as well. As long as it's got these features, it should fit well. Some people have concerns about running tractors on greens because of the way the machine aerates after, and the width it generally covers the wheels of the tractor, and any wheel marks will be removed after you've driven over the green. Water supply, so you're going to need a 1-inch hose to supply the machine. Maximum of 100 meters. If there is particularly poor water supply, then you can put a secondary filter in, and it needs a minimum of 2 bar to actually switch on the machine. We do have a call it an aquabuddy booster pump, so that's like an auxiliary pump which pumps the water pressure up to 2 bar. Sometimes if there's courses in mountainous regions where they've got a couple of greens at an elevation, sometimes the water pressure is lower on those points, it needs a bit of help. So sound quality needs to be sort of maximum 2 millimeter size, and just ensuring that it is as clean as possible. As I said before, this is wet sand that the machine uses because it's got that hydraulic powered agitation and vibration system. You can use particularly wet sand if necessary. If you are adding any products to the mix, then just making sure that it's a minimum of 80% sand ensures that the machine runs smoothly. So these are just a couple of tools that we take out when we're using the machine. So you've got moisture meter to check the moisture content, petronometers handy just to find out if there is any layers in particular. Often find if people have been using 4-inch tines that beyond 4-inch there might be a small area of compaction which needs to be blasted through. The soil profile cutter will help you to see what the machine's doing in the ground. As I said before, the first video had featured the latest machine. So this is something we're bringing out in 2023. And it's basically to mark 10 years of the machine being in production. And we've just, all of the things that we've had fed back to us about the machine are now featured in this. So it's a lot easier to operate than previous models because it runs like a conventional aerator. When you turn the PTO on, the machine starts to work. It's got, the hopper is redesigned so you can load it with a tractor loader bucket easier. It's got reduced water usage. It no longer washes the rear roller. You might have noticed in some of the other videos. New LED touchscreen display. This makes it incredibly easy and functional to use. It's been quite a good development. The rear mounted hose as well is something that we've brought in. It will lock either side, but it does, if you need to, you can turn round with the machine and come back on yourself. Improved weight distribution, so it does help if there's a tractor with which is on the edge of its lift capacity, then this does help that as well. Front and rear roller scrapers and integral toolbox to hold maintenance tools. These are just a couple of the people that are using the machine around the world. Courses on the left are actually all machines that are purchased. A lot of the ones on the right hand side will be machines which are done by our contractors. No, ones in Scotland who get on really well with the machines. Morton Hall, for example, have used theirs 4 times this year, putting in just about around 120 tonne into their profile across a hectare of greens. So, how do you start your top changer journey? So, teamed up with 5S Turf in India. So, contact's going to be Rohit for that, who is on this video as well. So thank you very much. I think if we've got any questions, just put them into the chat section and we'll run through those now.
Thank you, Peter, for a very, very concise presentation for something which is fairly new In fact, we haven't seen that in India. And I would request Sia, if there are questions, can you repeat it to Peter, please?
Well, there's one question at the moment that what are some golf courses where the stop changer is being used? So if you can just name them, that'd be great.
On that, I had that on that last slide there. So the ones that I manage in the UK, these are some of the sort of more well-known ones. So these are ones that have been sold this year. There's quite a few more than that, but they're Parkland courses which aren't quite as well known. Royal Troon, I've had theirs for most of this year. Getting on really well with it. Royal Porthcawl, Trump Turnberry in Scotland, quite a prestigious course. Gullen, also in Scotland, is probably more so prestigious. Walton Heath is down near London. Morton Hall, again up in Scotland, is a Parkland course. Prince's Golf Club is down in the south of England. And Royal Birkdale is up in the Midlands. There's probably 50 machines working in the USA at the moment, sold to golf courses, but I don't, because that's managed by our distributor, I don't know where all of those are. There's one at Sage Valley.
Peter, as far as your list is concerned, obviously it's in your territory. So most of them seem to be links or sandbelt courses. What about
Right.
what about the usage in parkland courses, something like the American market? I appreciate that you may not know too much about that market.
Yeah, so Walton Heath is a heathland course, generally a lot heavier soil. Again, they've had really good results with their machine. The depth, you don't quite get as much depth as you would on a sand-based course. It does take longer, but you still get really good results with it.
And do you think clay-based fairways? I mean, in India, most of them are clay-based fairways. They may be sand-based greens, but clay content is high in the fairways. This machine is more useful for those kind of turf?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're probably going to see more results faster from it on those sort of surfaces, especially with things like drainage.
Yes, because the clay fairways also have issues with drainage at many times, because they settle down differently, and you can have a certain amount of troughs. So does this help a little bit in draining the excess moisture also?
Absolutely, yeah. What some people do as well, they will take a deep tine across it first if they wanted to get really deep in one pass. That is possible.
And if I understand it correctly, I think with the water being injected inside, golf courses which have issues with low temperature, where you have the moisture frozen inside the soil or inside the subsurface, it should be helping there too, because it must be warming up the underground temperature a little bit, at least thawing it.
It won't. It will dry it out. Yeah, so you'll get less water concentrated in one particular area. So if it's stopping at an area of compaction,
yes,
then it'll prevent that.
Yeah. Sia, does anyone has more questions?
Yeah. So we have one question. Meanwhile, I would like to announce to the participants that if you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat box. I will ask the question to Mr. Peter here. And if you're not comfortable writing the question, if you want to ask him directly, you can also use the option of raise hand or put it in the chat box that you want to ask a question verbally. We can unmute you and you can ask it. Sir, there is one question in the chat box. How much does the machine estimately cost? So if you can just give an idea about that.
Roughly UK pounds, £40,000, roughly. Obviously, there'd probably be considerably more delivery to get a machine to India. But yeah, that's a rough. And we supply the machine, comes with enough spare parts to do around about 5 or 6 hectares of treatment. So the wearing parts of the cone that the sand passes through, the injection valves, and a filter bag, and they're roughly about £350 per set of items. So, and as well, in the crate comes all of the tools that you need to actually maintain the machine. So.
All right. There is another question in the chat box. Injection versus core removal, which is more productive?
In terms of production, like you're only doing one process with the top changer. Although it could be deemed slow, that you're still removing the need to go over the green 3 or 4 times with a conventional coring approach. So it should be more productive to inject. Probably the biggest benefit as well is you're not actually getting that disruption and the complaints from golfers after you've been across with a coring machine. So you're going to have a happy pro shop as well as getting the job done that you want to. So
less disruption also means that probably you're addressing the root zone much more directly in this method than the traditional coring.
Yeah, certainly less damage to the root system.
Yes.
And a lot of the time you're removing a good proportion of sand, good clean sand that you've already paid for with coring. Now, although you might use that on other areas of the course, it's still, you're removing product and life from the ground, which doesn't really need to be removed if there's enough oxygen to break down that thatch.
Yes.
Well, we have another question. Solid tines or core aeration, which is the best?
Better.
Depends what you're trying to achieve. To go, probably, I prefer solid tining if you're going to do it, especially needle tines. A lot can be solved with just getting oxygen into the ground and creating that gas exchange, and you're encouraging the water to go further down into the profile with a stronger plant. But I'm not a greenkeeper.
Well, we have a raised hand from Colonel KKK Singh. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, my question is, now we have water injectors into the green, we have air injectors into the green. Now we're talking about sand injectors into the green. Could you describe the difference between all these three?
So air, I guess you're talking about the Air 2G2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something similar, yes.
Yeah. I mean, they're all different methods. They are all doing separate things, really. Air is going to be more of aeration, but you're not going to be able to amend anything with just injecting air. Water aeration is really a low impact way of aerating the ground. And then sand injection is going to be a way of aerating the ground and then actually amending the profile that you've got and the makeup of the soil. So you are doing 3 different things. The top changer will do 2 of those.
Okay.
Peter, sand injection will also achieve aeration. And of course, you're also putting some moisture inside. So perhaps it's a more holistic way of, amending the soil, aeration, and some moisture control itself.
Absolutely. And the more dry sand actually gets hydrophobic.
Yes.
At a period. So if you're injecting in water under pressure down further into the profile, then you're going to be hopefully tempting the water that's there and falls afterwards to actually be drawn further down into the profile.
Yes.
And then those roots are going to be seeking further down, which should mean you'd have to irrigate less and hopefully got more resilience in the plant itself. So
true.
All right. If anyone else has any questions, you can kindly write it. Otherwise, we can be done.
I think we are done here probably.
Right, so we don't have any further questions. We just
ha-
had
ha-
one person
yeah.
asking, is it regarding solid tining? I think, will it aid green longevity?
the top changer is that.
Yeah.
Or solid tining. So yeah, using a top changer, you should be able to. The green should last indefinitely, really. Like I said before, some of the courses that are used in the machine in the UK, they haven't been dug up for 100+ years. And that can continue with this sort of process. So yeah, definitely you're going to prolong the expectancy. We're doing some work on hybrid football pitches as well. So these have sometimes it's like a lifespan of 10 or 15 years, and then afterwards they have to be dug up. And we're actually being able to extend the life of those surfaces so that courses don't have to replace the pitch for another 5 years on top of that period. So they get another 5 years play out of their investment that they made in the hybrid pitch. And this is down to the fact that they've got high lying pipes in the soil structure, which actually heat the soil up to get better growth and recovery. You can't aerate beyond them with conventional methods, but you can with the water only method because it doesn't damage anything under the ground. So that's actually been quite effective at prolonging the life of those surfaces. So
yeah, just to add for everyone, in my view, a lot of times relaying greens is more to hide the failures than actually the real need. A well-managed greens perhaps can last for years and years and years. I mean, like what Peter had just now pointed out, greens in Royal Troon are 100 years old. I think the same is in US. Same was true in India too. I mean, some of the marquee golf courses, the greens have survived for 50 years, 60 years in good condition. So I think greenkeeper's role is that much more enhanced in improving the longevity of greens. And of course, all the machinery like this does help.
it's like the course I went to in Finland, where they'd laid 80 to 100 meters of basically the wrong medium, which then caused an issue in the ground.
Yes.
potentially avoidable situation. So.
All right. I don't think there's any further questions. We don't have any further questions, sir.
On behalf of GCS and MAI, I would like to thank Mr. Thomas Peter for enlightening us with the new technology, a new machine. VGR of Netherlands is very much into sustainability of environment. Sustainability of environment also reduces costs in the long run. It also depletes lesser natural resources. So thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you very much, Mr. Peter. Thomas Peter, sorry.
Thank you for having me. I hope it was useful for you all.
Yeah.
I think as well, if anyone doesn't have any questions after, if they wanted to email Rohit as well, I'm sure he'd be able to help out. So,
and hopefully we'll see more VGR machines in India very soon.
absolutely.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much.
All right. With this, we end our session for today. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Mr. Peter, and thank you, Mr. Singh. Thank you.
Thank you.